My name is Arlo. I'm just an ordinary office worker, leading a pretty mundane life, going back and forth between work and home every day with nothing special to boast about. When I first started working, I had bigger dreams of climbing the corporate ladder, but I'm not good at calculated moves due to my personality. I often end up being assigned to jobs that nobody else wants to take on. My inability to say no becomes my own enemy, and even though I work diligently, I'm still a regular employee with no title to my name. However, there was a time when I used to be a lot happier and smiled more. I got married to my girlfriend, whom I had been dating since the start of my working life. It was a happy married life. It also motivated me to do well in my job. But that happy life didn't last long. Hey, are you telling me to live on this meager amount this month again? A few years into our marriage, my inability to produce results at work frustrated my wife, and she often showed her irritation. I'm sorry. I do my best, I said. How many years and how many times have you repeated those words? I thought marrying you would mean a better life, but with this low salary, we can't do anything. I'm fed up, Jenna replied. My wife, Jenna, has always loved spending money on herself, from beauty treatments, cosmetics, nails, and hair salons to clothes. She was a woman whose greatest joy in life was keeping herself beautiful. It seemed she married me believing that life would be luxurious since I am a doctor's son. Indeed, my dad is a doctor. He owns his own clinic. But my dad, who had a personality similar to mine, used to see his patients for almost charitable rates, and he often provided care without any profit for patients who were hesitant to seek treatment due to financial constraints. People can pay back when they recall it in the future, as long as they are alive to do so. Money can't be generated if you are not alive, my dad used to say. Due to this, despite being a doctor's family, we never lived a wealthy life. Of course, as a child, I never felt dissatisfied or doubted this way of living, and I'm still proud of my dad to this day. However, Jenna decided to marry me, categorizing me as a doctor's son without knowing this background. So, it turned out to be a completely different life than she had planned. A few years later, she said, I've had enough. If this is all we can do, there's no point in being with you. Let's get a divorce. A divorce? Hold on, please, I pleaded. How many years do you think I've waited? I age just as much as you do. I need to redo my life while I still can. I definitely don't want to be a low-income wife like you for the rest of my life, Jenna retorted. With those harsh words, Jenna left, leaving only the divorce papers behind. I was mad at myself for not realizing Jenna's true nature, and for not being able to prove her wrong with my job performance. 5 years have passed since then. I threw myself into work to heal the emotional wounds, but being not savvy, I still couldn't achieve outstanding performance at work, remaining a regular employee. If this continues, what Jenna said would turn out to be true. I feel utterly miserable. During that time, an envelope arrived in my mailbox. From Jenna. What does she want now? Inside the letter from my ex-wife Jenna, who I hadn't heard from in a long time, was a wedding invitation. It seems that Jenna is remarrying someone else. Why would my ex-wife send me an invitation? As I looked at the postcard, puzzled, I noticed a familiar chapel name written on it. This place, isn't it a super luxurious hotel? Knowing Jenna, she must have chosen a rich man to be her partner this time as well. I could easily guess that she intended to flaunt her happiness in a luxurious hotel wedding just to rub it in and show the difference between her life now and the life she had with me. I don't owe her to attend. I mean, I was the one who got dumped. But maybe for Jenna as well, me not succeeding in my job was an unexpected turn of events. After pondering for a while, I sighed deeply and stood up from my seat. This is the last time. I guess I'll just go. I knew attending the wedding would shatter my pride, but I decided to go anyway. Despite that, Jenna was willing to stay by my side for several years, even though she had to put up with me. I can somewhat understand her desire to show me that she's finally happy as a form of revenge. From an outsider's perspective, she might seem too kind-hearted. Nevertheless, I chose to attend her wedding. On the day of the wedding, we were blessed with perfect weather. I arrived a bit earlier than planned, and while sipping on my coffee in the lounge, I stared blankly out of the window. It was indeed her second wedding, so I recognized a few of Jenna's friends who I had been introduced to before. Unexpectedly, I overheard a conversation from the seat next to me. "After all, Jenna did an amazing job to get this wedding, didn't she?" "Yeah, it's in a luxury hotel this time. It's a level up from the first one." "Yeah, she used to complain that her first husband was a doctor's son, but when she opened the lid, he was just an ordinary office worker without money. It's really unexpected, isn't it?" Hearing them talk without realizing my presence, I felt a sharp pain in my heart. So Jenna never really liked me for who I was. I realized that when we got divorced, but hearing it from someone else's mouth makes it even harder. Before she divorced her first husband, she had already set her sights on her current husband, I heard them say. "Really well done, Jenna. Well calculated." I couldn't believe my ears. So that means Jenna was already in a relationship with her current partner before she even divorced me. My pride was shattered to pieces. She looked down on me so much, but she was the one cheating. I started to regret even being here. Trying to maintain composure, I took another sip of my coffee, but my hand was shaking. Jenna appeared in front of me, all prepared to move to the bridal room. "You really came. You're really a good person, right?" she said, sneering at me with a sigh. Trying to hold back my madness, I stared at her, struggling to keep my composure. I responded, "Well, consider it my last duty. Glad you could find happiness." I forced a smile. Not liking my attitude, Jenna continued to belittle me. "Isn't it wonderful? It's incomparable to the time with you. Here's a share of happiness for the poor bachelor. Be grateful, will you?" She laughed sarcastically. Just then, a refreshing-looking man spoke to her from behind. It was the groom, her new husband. "Jenna, it seems like the relatives have gathered. Let's hurry to the bridal room." Her husband, Michael, glanced at me briefly and gave a slight nod. I reflexively nodded back, perhaps thinking the groom was unaware that Jenna had invited her ex-husband to the wedding. "There's still some time before the ceremony, so please make yourself comfortable," Michael said with a pleasant smile as they were about to pass by me. At that moment, an older man following the groom spoke to me. "Excuse me for asking, but may I have your name?" "Dad, what's wrong?" Nothing, just curious." Feeling uneasy under the groom's dad's serious gaze, I responded, "My name is Arlo Lopez. Is your father a doctor by any chance?" The groom's dad suddenly seemed frantic. Staggering a bit under his intense presence, I nodded to his question. Immediately, the color drained from the groom's dad's face, and suddenly he raised his voice. "Michael, the wedding is off right now." "What? Huh? What are you talking about, Dad? What did you just say?" Caught off guard by this unexpected turn of events, I hurriedly stood up from my seat. "No, I didn't do anything." While I was still in a state of panic, the groom's dad began to prostrate himself at my feet. People around the venue started to murmur and stir. "Dad, what are you doing?" "No, really, what?" Even as the groom urged his dad to lift his head, he stayed bowed down, pressing his forehead to the floor without changing his posture. I was completely lost and had no idea what was going on. Jenna, caught in this embarrassing situation, turned red with anger and started to lash out. "Can we just talk about this?" "Lift your head, please," I said, trying to calm the situation. I persuaded the groom's dad to lift his head, and he began to plead for forgiveness, tears in his eyes. "I'm begging for your forgiveness. I've been unfaithful to Dr. Lopez." It seemed that the groom's dad, Charles, had some past connection with my dad. To understand the truth, I listened intently to Charles's words as he began to speak hesitantly. The groom's dad, Charles, was a fellow doctor like my dad. The story dates back to my early childhood when Charles was still a trainee doctor at the hospital. My dad had just started his own medical practice. My dad was recognized for his skills at a renowned university hospital, and Charles, who was attending the Associated Medical School, looked up to him. He volunteered to train at my dad's hospital and learned various techniques. One day, Charles's wife gave birth. However, the baby was found to have a congenital heart defect. The heart surgery required for the baby was risky, and the chances of survival were slim, which made the other doctors reluctant to perform the operation. Desperate, Charles consulted my dad. My dad agreed to help and perform the heart surgery, saving the baby's life. However, the medical expenses for the baby's heart condition were substantial. Back in the day, Charles, who was a trainee doctor at the time, didn't have the means to pay it all back at once. With tears streaming down his face, he bowed deeply and asked my dad if he could repay the amount in installments. My dad just laughed and shook his head. "Someday, when you become a great doctor and have the time to remember me, come back and repay me then. I guarantee you'll definitely become a great doctor," he said, trying to keep Charles from feeling too pressured. Some time after, Charles was sent abroad to study medicine and didn't return to the States for several years. Despite this, he never forgot his promise to my dad and continued to save money for the repayment. However, by the time he came back to the States, my dad's hospital was no longer there. The contact information had changed, and they had lost touch. The fact that he couldn't repay the money had always weighed heavily on his heart, and he had lived all those years without being able to do anything about it. Today, he happened to see me at the hotel and was shocked. He said I looked just like my dad used to. "I'm truly sorry. Please, I'm begging you, let me meet your dad in person and apologize to him," he pleaded. Feeling Charles's intense emotions, I responded calmly. "That sounds just like something my dad would do. But my dad has already passed away." Hearing the news about someone from his past, Charles stood there in a daze. "No way! He passed away from cancer 3 years ago. Until then, he had been moving from one clinic to another. He was a wonderful doctor, always considering his patients until the very end." Kneeling on the floor, Charles broke down in tears. "Dad, this isn't the place, Michael. That scar on your chest, that's proof that Dr. Lopez saved your life." Michael seemed to lose his words. "You're able to have a wedding ceremony and be here today all thanks to Dr. Lopez." Charles bowed to me again and said, "I want to repay all the kindness that I couldn't repay to your dad. Please." In a hurry, I lifted Charles's face and extended my hand to help him stand up. "Mr. Charles, I'm really happy. Just remembering my dad is enough for me. The life my dad saved is now able to celebrate such a wonderful day like today. Being able to come in contact with the proof of my dad's existence makes me happy. I'm sure my dad would be happy too." Hearing my words, Charles started crying out loud again. While there were cheers and applause from the onlookers, Jenna was the only one glaring at me with a look of fury. Eventually, the time for the ceremony to start drew near, and the ceremony was held as scheduled. I had undergone an unexpected experience, and my wounded heart had changed to feelings of pride and brightness. Afterwards, Charles insisted on repaying the medical expenses and the kindness my dad had shown, and I ended up receiving a substantial amount of money that he had saved for my dad. Furthermore, Charles's hospital started doing business with my company, which significantly boosted my performance, and I finally got promoted. The kindness and compassion my dad had shown had come back to me in such a way. I cherished the happiness while recalling the serious look in my dad's eyes when he was working. As for Jenna, although she was enjoying her second marriage, her husband found out that she had dated me before our divorce, and that both her previous and current marriages were motivated by money. Eventually, he grew tired of her, leading to another divorce. I heard about it through the grapevine. What goes around comes around. Like my dad, I live my life believing that even if something doesn't benefit me directly, it could still contribute to someone else's happiness. Today, again, I saw someone smile. Just that fact alone assures me that my life is definitely heading in the right direction.